everyone, my name is Vicky, and today I'm going to tell you the story of the elephant's child. It's a story that was written by a man named Rudyard Kipling, and I'm going to tell it to you the way it was told to me. And it starts like this. In the high and far off times, O best beloved, the elephant had no trunk. He had only a nose about as big as a boot, that he could wriggle about from side to side, but he couldn't pick up things with it. And there was one elephant, a new elephant, an elephant's child, who was full of insatiable curiosity, and that means he asked ever so many questions. And he lived in Africa, and he filled all of Africa with his insatiable curiosity. He asked his tall aunt the ostrich why her tail feathers grew just so, and his tall aunt the ostrich spanked him with her hard claw. And he asked his tall uncle the giraffe what made his skin spotty, and his tall uncle the giraffe spanked him with his hard hoof. And still he was full of insatiable curiosity. He asked his broad aunt the hippopotamus why her eyes were red, and his broad aunt the hippopotamus spanked him with her broad hoof. And he asked his hairy uncle the baboon why melons tasted just so, and his hairy uncle the baboon spanked him with his hairy paw. And still he was full of insatiable curiosity. One day, in the middle of the procession of the equinoxes, the elephant's child asked a new question that he had never asked before. He asked, "What does the crocodile have for dinner?" "Hush!" said his family in a dreadful tone, and they all spanked him immediately for a long time without stopping. By and by, when that was done, the elephant's child came across a kola bird sitting in a wait-a-bit thorn bush. And he said, "My father has spanked me, and my mother has spanked me. All my aunts and uncles have spanked me for my insatiable curiosity, and still I want to know what the crocodile has for dinner." "Ho!" said Kola bird. "Go to the great, grey, green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, and find out." So the very next day, the elephant's child gathered up 100 pounds of bananas, the little red kind, 100 pounds of sugar cane, the purply crackly kind, and 17 melons. And he said to his family, "Goodbye, I am going to the great, grey, green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, to find out what the crocodile has for dinner." And they all spanked him quickly for good luck, though he asked them most politely to stop. And then he went away, a little warm but not at all astonished, eating his melons and throwing the rind about, because he could not pick it up. Now you have to understand, O best beloved, that up until that very week, day, hour, and minute, the elephant's child had never seen a crocodile and did not know what one looked like. And by he came upon a bicolored python rock snake curled round a rock, and he said, "Excuse me, but have you seen a crocodile in these promiscuous parts?" "Have I seen a crocodile?" said the bicolored python rock snake. "Heavens, what will you ask me next?" "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, "but could you kindly tell me what the crocodile has for dinner?" And then the bicolored python rock snake uncoiled himself from the rock very quickly and spanked the elephant's child with his scalesome, flailsome tail. "That is odd," said the elephant's child, "because my father has spanked me, and my mother has spanked me, and my aunt and uncle have, as well as my broad aunt the hippopotamus and my hairy uncle the baboon have all spanked me for my insatiable curiosity, and I suppose this is the same thing." So he said goodbye to the bicolored python rock snake and helped him curl back round the rock, and then he went away a little warm but not at all astonished, eating his melons and throwing the rind about, until he stepped on what he thought was a log. But it was really the crocodile, O best beloved, and he winked one eye like this. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, "but have you seen a crocodile in these promiscuous parts?" The crocodile winked the other eye and lifted up his tail out of the water, and the elephant's child backed away because he did not want to be spanked again. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, "but my mother has spanked me, and my father has spanked me, not to mention my tall aunt the ostrich, and my tall uncle the giraffe, who can kick ever so hard, and my other aunt the hippopotamus, and my other uncle the baboon, and if it's all the same to you, I don't want to be spanked again." "Come hither, little one," said the crocodile, "for I am the crocodile." And he wept great crocodile tears to show that it was true. And then the elephant's child grew all breathless and excited, and he knelt down in front of the crocodile and he said, "You are the very person I have been looking for all these long days. Can you please tell me what you have for dinner?" "Come hither, little one," said the crocodile, "and I'll whisper." And the elephant's child put his trunk up against the crocodile's musky, tusky mouth. and the crocodile caught him by the nose. And he said, "I think," but he said it through his teeth like this, "I think today I will start with Elephant's Child." At these words, the elephant's child grew all upset, and he said through his nose, "Let go, you are hurting me." And then the bicolored python rock snake scuffled down from the bank, and he said to the elephant's child, "If you don't right now and immediately pull as ever you can, that crocodile over there is going to yank you into the stream before you can say Jack Robinson." This is the way bicolored python rock snakes always talk. So the elephant's child sat back on his haunches, and he pulled and pulled and pulled, and his nose began to stretch. And the crocodile pulled and pulled and pulled, and he made great sweeps in the water with his tail, turning it all creamy. And the elephant's child pulled and pulled and pulled, and his nose continued to stretch. And the crocodile pulled and pulled and pulled, thrashing his tail like an oar. And quite suddenly the elephant's child began to feel his feet slipping, and then the bicolored python rock snake knotted himself around the elephant's child's leg in a double clove hitch, and he said, "If we do not now and immediately pull as ever we can, that man over there with the upper plated armor deck," and by this he meant the crocodile, "shall immediately terminate your career." This is the way bicolored python rock snakes always talk. So the elephant's child and the bicolored python rock snake pulled and pulled and pulled, and the crocodile pulled and pulled and pulled. But the elephant's child and the bicolored python rock snake pulled hardest, and quite suddenly the crocodile let go, and the elephant's child's nose hit the water with a great plop that could be heard all the way up and down the Limpopo River. Then the elephant's child sat back down on his haunches very suddenly, and he was sure to say thank you to the bicolored python rock snake, and then he was kind to his poor pulled nose, which was now about 5 feet long, and he wrapped it up in cool banana leaves and laid it in the great green greasy Limpopo River to cool. "What are you doing that for?" said the bicolored python rock snake. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, "but my nose is badly out of shape, and I am waiting for it to shrink." "Well, you are going to have to wait a long time," said the bicolored python rock snake. "Some people don't know what's good for them." Now you have to understand, O best beloved, that the crocodile had actually pulled the elephant's child's nose into a really, truly trunk, same as all elephants have today. So the elephant's child waited for 3 days for his nose to shrink, but it never did. And on the 3rd day, a fly came and stung him on the shoulder, and before he knew what he was doing, he lifted up his trunk and hit that fly dead. "Vantage number 1, said the bicolored python rock snake. "You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. The sun is very hot here, don't you think?" "It is," said the elephant's child, and he used his trunk to sloop up some mud and dropped it onto his head, all cool and trickly behind the ears. "Vantage number 2, said the bicolored python rock snake. "You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Now try and eat a little." And the elephant's child plucked up a bundle of grass, dusted it off on his hoof, and stuffed it into his mouth. "Vantage number 3, said the bicolored python rock snake. "You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Now how do you feel about being spanked?" "Excuse me, I should not like it at all," said the elephant's child. "Well, how do you feel about spanking someone?" "I should like it very much," said the elephant's child. "Well," said the bicolored python rock snake, "I think you will find that new nose of yours is very good for spanking people with." "Thank you," said the elephant's child, and he went away feeling happy, frisking and whisking his trunk. As he went along, he picked up all the rinds he had dropped before, for he was a tidy pachyderm. And when he was hungry, he plucked fruit out of a tree or grass from the ground. And when he was cold, he made himself a sloopy, sloshy mud cap, all trickly behind his ears. Or when he was hot, he did that. And if he was bored, he would blow air through his nose, and it sounded like several bands. Until finally, one night, he came upon his family. and he curled up his trunk and said very politely, "How do you do?" And his family said, "Come here right away so you can be spanked for your insatiable curiosity." And he said, "Pooh, I don't think you know anything about spanking." "But I do." And he quickly uncoiled his trunk and knocked two of his brothers head over heels. "Oh, bananas!" they said. "Where did you learn to do that? And what have you done to your trunk, to your nose?" "I went to the great gray green greasy Limpopo River to ask the crocodile what he had for dinner, and he gave me this to keep," said the elephant's child. "It looks very ugly," said his hairy uncle the baboon. "It does," agreed the elephant's child, "but it's very useful." And then he picked up his hairy uncle the baboon by one hairy leg and shoved him into a hornet's nest. And then that bad elephant's child went about spanking all his dear families. He plucked out his tall Aunt the ostrich's tail feathers, and he dragged his tall uncle the giraffe by his leg through a thorn bush, and then he blew bubbles into his broad Aunt the hippopotamus's ears while she was sleeping in the water. Finally, everything grew so excited that all his dear families went down to the great gray green greasy Limpopo River to get themselves new noses from the crocodile. And when they came back, nobody spanked anybody. And now all elephants have a trunk just the same as the elephant's child. The end.